Welcome to Resist the Empire, a libertarian view of the Star Wars universe. This is your one-stop shop for news, events, and topics in the Star Wars canon. From a libertarian perspective, here are your hosts, Brian McQuaid and Roger Paxton.
Welcome to Resist the Empire. My name is Brian McQuaid.
And I'm Roger Paxton.
How you doing tonight, Roger?
Fantastic.
Most excellent. So we've both had really busy times since we got back from PorkFest.
I mean, even at PorkFest, it was crazy busy for both of us.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I kind of feel bad because we literally tried to schedule like 3 different times to meet up and do our podcast, and like it was just, something was going on.
Well,
got crazy work stuff going on.
Right. My voice has just given out twice on me because of all this PorkFest stuff and all the planning and everything that we've had to do, and then of course everything that we had to do after that, and then it's been insane. Of course, between the debrief for PorkFest and but we're back.
We are back and ready to roll. Did you see this recreation of the Last Jedi trailer on that 84
and
computer?
I wasn't crazy about it. I mean, I see that. I know 8-bit. I mean, it's my old school ways and everything, but it just seemed like that took a lot of time for
a lot of effort.
No, yeah,
I thought it was cool. I mean, I liked it because it was a big, drawback to some of the stuff we grew up with.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty neat. Definitely took a lot of time. The project required 48 floppy disks and 288 image files, totaling 6 megabytes of storage space. Yeah. And it was on an 84 Apple computer.
Yeah.
So we dropped the link in there. It was pretty crazy. Rebels Season 3 is out on Blu-ray August 29th.
And you cannot pre-order it on Amazon yet. I don't get it.
That's strange.
Yeah, it is. But I put a reminder. Hey, let me know when this is available for pre-order.
I wonder if they're still maybe adding other things to that or something. Maybe they're adding some extra content or something. I don't know. PorkFest. It was a good time.
PorkFest was insane for me.
Yeah.
Jess and I were running the main pavilion and the creating communities tent, but there were so many. And I hate to be this way, but there were a lot of volunteers who dropped balls.
Yeah.
So Jess and I invariably had to pick up most of those balls and fix the issues. So, I mean, we were running the whole time. I mean, I didn't get to hang out with anybody. I mean, we had Scott and Adam from ANCAP Barbershop up here from Alabama.
That was awesome. It was
and I only
great
got to see them for, 3 or 4 hours through the whole week.
Yeah.
Didn't get to hang out with you and Daryl like I wanted to, and Herschel and all my good friends. And
yeah, you were definitely running around crazy like a chicken with your head cut off.
It was insane, but it was so much fun. I tell you, I've never worked with such a team in my life. I mean, all of these people were volunteers, and everybody just pitched in and did their thing. It was an incredible team, with the exception of a couple of people. But the vast majority of the team was one of the best teams I've ever worked with.
So I was handing out, those new cards you got for us. I was handing them out to some people, and one of the people I was going to hand one out to was a guy named John that I met at the LPNH tent. And he's like, oh, I listened to that show. I was like, oh, so I introduced myself and whatever. And I was asking him like, hey, what do you think you would like? And he had a suggestion that I thought was pretty good that we might want to take him up on in the future is because the novels are so huge and we want to cover that content. He was considering like, oh, maybe you guys could do something kind of like a book club thing where you say, hey, we're going to read these couple of chapters or whatever, and then on the next show, we'll talk about them. So then the viewer, if they have the book and want to read along, or if somebody wants to get it, they could do that and then kind of follow up with us on the next
That's not
episode.
a bad idea because I've been wondering how we tackle these big books, especially like the Aftermath series and, of course, now the Battlefront series, since there's going to be a second Battlefront coming out later this month. Yeah. That's a great way to maybe tackle those big series instead of having to cram a bunch of stuff into one little segment.
Yeah.
That's actually worth looking at. I like that.
Yeah, so I thought it was pretty cool, and thank you for that, John, and thank you for listening. It was good to meet you and all of our listeners that I met out there. We had quite a few of them. So, so I thought it was my first PorkFest. I had a great time. and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, it was my second one, and this one to me was even better than the first one. Attendance was a little bit down. We had about 1,500 last year, and over 1,000, around 1,100 this time.
Okay.
So attendance was down quite a bit, but it looks like we're about 99% sure at this point that Jess and I, my wife, are going to be the lead producers for PorkFest 2018.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be the 15th anniversary of PorkFest, and we're going to be running the show, and I'm really excited about that.
That's great. I know my wife was kind of interested in like, well, I think I'm going to help out too.
Oh, we'd love that.
And I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome. I'm already taking a whole week off next year for the national convention, most likely. So I really need to not take days off of work now. Because if you want to go and help them out, chances are that means I'll be helping out in some fashion.
You better be.
Yeah. So, well, I may have other commitments. We may have a Resist the Empire 10 or something. I don't know.
There you go.
But yeah, so it'll be fun.
Tatooine Times. Here's the latest news you need to know from the Star Wars canon movies, TV shows, books, comics, and more.
And it says the latest news you need to know. But I'll be honest, guys, I put this together well over a week ago. We were trying to get together. And
but there really hasn't been anything breaking in the last several days, other than maybe Forces of Destiny, those episodes coming out.
Yeah, and I definitely, we're going to get to that. But this article will definitely be old news to some of you. The fired Han Solo directors believed they were hired to make a comedy, which I don't know why they would think they would.
Because that's what they've done in the past.
No, I know that.
And I think that Disney maybe had the idea of making Han Solo, the Han Solo show, a little bit more funny than others in the past. And that's why they went with comedian directors. Yeah. But I think that, based on what I'm hearing anyway, that they just took it way above board. Right. But apparently, and what I've heard is they were filming basically two versions of the movie. They were filming a version of the movie that had a lot of ad-lib, that was off script, and had a lot of funny stuff in it. And then they were also filming the script as well. And some of the stuff that they showed to Disney, they were just not pleased with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this one was from the BusinessInsider.com. On Thursday, Lucasfilm announced that Oscar-winner Ron Howard will be taking over the directing reins of the untitled Han Solo movie following Tuesday's shocking news that its original directors, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, from the Lego Movie and 21 Jump Street, were fired.
And let me tell you how excited I am about that Ron Howard is finally directing a Star Wars movie. That's awesome.
It's not the worst choice in the world when you're picking someone to do a Star Wars film.
I hope that he gets one of his own, though, eventually. He's obviously catching this one from the back end. I'd love to see him get one of his own.
Yeah, get another Solo spinoff movie or something like that. No pun intended with Solo.
Right.
Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, who is also a producer on the movie, would only go so far as to say in a statement that both sides had creative differences, a term often used in Hollywood when a falling out occurs. But what were those differences? Entertainment Weekly is reporting the main friction between the directing duo and the Lucasfilm brass was the level of comedy in the movie. Han Solo, the legendary space smuggler from the Star Wars saga, was always played with a sarcastic humor by its original actor, Harrison Ford. So the idea that a movie focused on a younger version of the character to be played by Alden Ehrenreich would have some laughs. But according to what sources tell EW, the duo thought they were making a full-on comedy. They thought they were brought on to make a Phil and Chris movie, said a source. Or as EW writer Anthony Bresnikan put it, Lucasfilm and producer Kennedy believed Lord and Miller were hired to add a comedic touch. Lord and Miller believed they were hired to make a comedy. And I'm sorry, I've sided with Disney on this one because if you've had any exposure whatsoever to Star Wars films, there's no way in it's
right.
Yeah,
I know. That there's a look and feel for Star Wars. Yeah. There just is. Yeah. And if you deviate from that in a major, now obviously you can have some deviation. Rogue One was a bit of a deviation, but it still had that look and feel of Star Wars. Yeah. But a full-on comedy, come on. Somebody wasn't thinking.
You're kidding me if you're telling me that's what they thought from the start.
It makes me wonder, though, was it just a bad choice of directors on Lucasfilm part? Kathleen Kennedy, maybe she just messed up and picked the wrong people.
That's
I don't
possible.
know. But at least they fixed it. That's the good news.
Yeah.
It concerns me, though. There's a lot of speculation this is going to push the release of the movie back. Yeah. They just recently fired an editor as well. Right after this, they fired one of the main editors. Yeah. So there's some major shakeups going on. Yeah. It's reminiscent of Rogue One and all the issues that went on with Rogue One towards the end. Obviously, not quite this bad. Right. But they pulled Rogue One out, and it worked out beautifully. I'm hoping they can do the same with Star Wars.
I think the big difference, though, in Rogue One is that we found out afterwards that all of the reshoots and stuff they made was, they were decisions that changed. They fundamentally changed the movie, right? But it was in a great direction.
Yeah, it was,
and it wasn't a problem. There wasn't any issues there with the staff, behind the scene.
Right.
So I think this is more concerning to me because it's really the whole scope and tone of your entire movie, right? So that would be more of a concern to me. Sure. Whereas this was, we added in the part at the end where Vader comes wrecking shop.
Yeah.
Through,
Well, it sounds like, though, based on some of the information that's been released, here and there, and of course some of it may or may not be true, but some of the information was that they did film most of the movie following the script. Yeah. So maybe there's enough salvageable there. They won't have to go back and do a ton of reshoots, and maybe we can still get this movie out when it's supposed to.
Yeah.
But if anybody can do it, it's Ron Howard.
Yeah. So we'll see what we get. Carrie Fisher's autopsy reveals cocktail of drugs, including cocaine, opiates, and ecstasy. Yeah. This is from LATimes.com. Los Angeles County Coroner's report released on Monday revealed a mixture of drugs that were in actress Carrie Fisher's system when she went into cardiac arrest on an LA-bound flight and later died. Fisher's toxicology review found evidence of cocaine, methadone, MDMA, which is also known as ecstasy, alcohol, and opiates when she was rushed to Ronald Reagan UCLA Hospital on December 23rd, a toxicology report showed. The test results suggest that there was an exposure to heroin, but that the dose and time of exposure cannot be pinpointed. Therefore, we cannot establish the significance of heroin regarding the cause of death in this case. The test revealed that the cocaine would have been consumed within the previous 72 hours, according to the autopsy. 4 days later, on December 27th, Fisher went into cardiac arrest. After 90 minutes of attempting to revive her, officials declared the Star Wars actress dead just before 9 a.m. Her cause of death was listed as sleep apnea with other factors. In addition to the listed cause of death, the coroner's statement cited other conditions, atherosclerotic heart disease, drug use. It also said how injury occurred was multiple drug intake, significance not ascertained.
And I don't think anybody's really surprised by this because she struggled with that since she was a young girl.
Yeah,
and she was always very open about her struggles. She wrote about it, she talked about it. And, sometimes those are struggles that people just can't get over. Yeah. It's heartbreaking that drugs took her away from us at such an early age. Yeah. But I don't think anybody's terribly surprised.
No. It was well known. Her daughter talked about it later on as well. That it was a well known struggle. Everybody knows, and that's a shame when you see someone go through that and eventually it claims them.
Well, Prince is another perfect example. I mean, he was taken way too young as well, and it was also addiction to drugs, and drugs are a horrible thing. Yeah. Does that mean that drugs should be illegal? Right. No, I think people should make those choices. She should be able to make the choices, to do to her body as she wants.
And let's face it, she was going to do that anyway because that's the type of person she was, as well as Princess Leia, right?
Well, I mean, look at the list of drugs: MDMA, illegal drugs; heroin, illegal drug; cocaine, illegal drug. Absolutely. So even with laws, people are still going to do those drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. Star Wars Forces of Destiny debuts this July. Yes. So we've actually watched a little bit of it already. This is from Polygon.com. Star Wars Forces of Destiny, the animated web series, which showcases the female heroes of the Star Wars universe, will premiere July 3rd on Disney's YouTube channel. I believe there's 5 of them I've watched so far.
There's 5 so far, yeah. Okay. 2 Leia, 2 Rey.
And 1 Leia.
Two Leia, 2 Rey,
2 Rey, and
Ahsoka.
1 Ahsoka.
Right.
The series was announced at Star Wars Celebration Orlando in April. Each episode will be 2 to 3 minutes in length and explore the untold stories that helped shape the destinies of various heroines. Star Wars Rebels producer Dave Filoni has described the series as bite-sized, short, self-contained adventures that take place in different time periods. Each short will be narrated by The Force Awakens' lovable and powerful orange Grandma Maz Kanata, with Lupita Nyong'o's reprising her role. Other actresses confirmed for the show include Daisy Ridley as Rey, Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso, Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka Tano, and Tia Sakar as Sabine Wren. Close viewers of the trailer can also spot Princess Leia going toe-to-toe with a Wampa and Padme Amidala, whacking the shapeshifter Zam Wesell across the head with a blunt object. Starting July 3rd, a new episode will go up on YouTube every day at 10 a.m. Forces of Destiny will then debut on Disney Channel July 9th.
Yeah. So have you seen all the one? You've seen all 5 of them so far?
Yeah, I've seen all 5. Maybe there was another one today because they said they're releasing one like every day.
Yeah. I personally have not been super thrilled with them.
Thank you.
Thank you. They're okay, but there's no meat to them.
I had no idea where you were going to land on this. We literally have not talked about this at all. No. And so I've watched every one of these, and I've gone, that feels a little forced and awkward.
It was kind of cute that we found out where Leia got her dress, but we kind of knew where that was coming from anyway. Yeah. She didn't find it in the woods.
Right.
In Return of the Jedi is right. The Return of the Jedi when she's with the Ewoks. But there's really no meat to the stories. There's the animation is not great.
I don't really care for animation that much. Literally, the only animated shows I watch are
Rebels
Star
and Clone
Wars.
Wars.
Yeah. That's not what I had the problem with, though. For me, especially with the Rey ones, it just felt like, here's the situation where we just shoehorned all this action in this one little spot here in Force Awakens, and it feels forced and it feels a little awkward to me, and I almost feel a little, I don't know if embarrassed is the word, but like watching it, I'm kind of like,
Right. They're definitely not the best thing that Star Wars has put out. And I understand what they're doing with it. I understand that, Star Wars has all of these great heroines, and I love that about Star Wars. It's great that it's not just a boy thing, and because it used to be when I was growing up, it was pretty much a boy thing. Sure. That was pretty much it. And I love that that's being branched out. But to do this in a way to focus on your heroines and then do it just lackadaisical is what it seems like.
Yeah, I have no problem with something focusing on the heroines, but man, do it solid. I don't feel like I feel these shorts are 2 to 3 minutes long, and I felt that's about how much thought went into putting them together.
Yeah, there's and they are canon, which is good.
Yeah.
But what's canon about it? Okay, we know that Rey already found BB-8. We know that she
fought this worm thing.
Right. Who cares?
All right. Yeah. Oh, another interaction with Tito.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, it was not good. Yeah. It wasn't terrible, but I certainly was not happy with it.
Yeah, so. I was. Yeah, it's not that I thought it was like completely horrible. It's just, and maybe that's the fault of my own. I was maybe expecting a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, based on the content that they've put out, books, comics, movies lately, the content has been fabulous.
Yeah.
And that's what I was expecting. I was expecting fabulous. I was expecting knock my socks off in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't there.
Yeah. So. Yeah. George Lucas calls his just-approved L.A. museum a new hope for young Angelinos. From thedailynews.com, filmmaker George Lucas Museum paying tribute to the narrative arts cleared a key hurdle with the Los Angeles City Council unanimously approving the $1.5 billion project in Exposition Park. The Lucas Museum of Narrative Art will focus on artwork with storytelling elements. The 5-story, 300-square-foot building will house his
300,000.
300,000. Thank you. 300,000 square foot building will house his extensive collection of paintings, illustration, and movie memorabilia. Completion of the whole project is set for 2021, and I've just got a little note in here. He's funding this project himself. No tax dollars. Kudos to you, George.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's got a rolling in doughs.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly. I love that.
Yeah. Rogue One and Star Wars Rebels notched 3 wins at the Saturn Awards.
I'd never heard of the Saturn Awards before this, but I'm so glad that they got some awards. That's great.
Well, so apparently the Saturn Awards they're pretty prestigious. So they're like sci-fi film awards, essentially. So this was from Star Wars Newsnet. Rogue One was nominated for 11 categories and came away with 2 highly prestigious awards, including Best Science Fiction Release and Best Film Direction, won by Gareth Edwards. Dave Filoni and everyone behind Rebels received an award for Best Animated Series or Film on Television, beating out established players like Family Guy and The Simpsons, as well as new ones like The Little Prince and Troll Hunters.
They beat out Family Guy and The Simpsons. That's huge.
And that's big, you're right? Yeah.
That's really, what Simpsons have been on for
I'll take
25, 30 years now.
I'll take it. We're not getting anything out. We're not getting any Emmys.
Well, and I'm hoping that will eventually change. Star Wars has never gotten any Emmy love. What was it? Empire Strikes Back was nominated, I think, for one, and then didn't win. So, and that's definitely got to change. The quality that they're putting out now, come on, it's got to change.
Yeah. Han Solo, Disney reportedly impressed with sizzle reel. So Disney licensees were shown a sizzle reel for the upcoming young Han Solo. And I got to interrupt myself here. I can't help but feel like this maybe was like, oh, we better put something positive out here.
Right. Because
after everything else that's going on.
How happy could they have been with the sizzle reel if they fired their directors and they fired their editor?
Right. And then a couple weeks later, hey guys, this is looking amazing.
Right.
So Disney licensees were shown a sizzle reel for the upcoming young Han Solo spin-off movie a while back and apparently liked what they saw. And it says a while back too. Right. And I didn't just drop this in here like 2 days ago. I'm pretty sure I've had it in here for like a week. Apparently they like what they saw. The project was neck deep in controversy since the surprise firing of original directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Details about what happened on the set continue to come out, so right now it's difficult to know the full story. Allegedly, there were concerns about Lord and Miller's improvisational style as they veered off script a little too much for writer Lawrence Kasdan and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy's liking. Still, word is that a majority of the footage the duo shot is very usable, which hopefully means the reshoots won't have to be extensive. Now, reports indicate Disney liked what they saw and presented a sizzle reel.
I wonder who put together that sizzle reel. I wonder if it was the editor that they fired. I mean, it brings up a lot of questions. It really does.
What were they watching? I need to know what they watched. Right. Was it pre or post firing?
Right.
This would answer a lot of questions. Per Star Wars Newsnet, reel was shown to Disney licensees about a month ago, and it was very positive. Outlet indicates Alden Ehrenreich's turn as Han Solo and Donald Glover's Lando Calrissian sporting that sweet mustache that we were looking at earlier. In particular, were highlights, which should be encouraging for fans. One thing, and this concerns me in this little snippet here, is recently it was said Lucasfilm hired an acting coach for Ehrenreich late in the game when it appeared the actor was not delivering the desired results as the smuggler.
And I think that scares me more than firing everybody because he's the cornerstone of that show. If he doesn't work, the whole movie doesn't work.
It completely falls apart. And this was my concern from ever since we started talking about this movie. My concern was right from the start was this guy doesn't even look like Han Solo to me. Right. He better pull off an amazing acting experience.
But look, we've replaced Harrison Ford in shows before. I mean, young Indiana Jones. That kid did a great job. Yeah. He pulled it off really, really well. Yeah. I think that if you get the right person, even if he doesn't look much like Harrison Ford, which surely is concerning, but the kid who did Young Indiana Jones didn't particularly look like Harrison Ford either, but he did a solid performance. This scares me because I really want to love this movie because Han Solo is absolutely one of my favorite characters in the Star Wars universe. And this is a little bit terrifying.
It's a big concern for me. Like I said, he needs to absolutely nail this acting role. And when I see stuff like hiring an acting coach for the lead in a Han Solo film,
and I wonder if it's because they are changing the direction, obviously, from a comedy to something different. Possibly. I wonder if maybe that's why they needed to get a coach in there to kind of help him make that transition.
Because I imagine that's a good sized transition.
Sure, especially when you've already invested in this character and you've put much into this character. I'm hoping it's something simple like that.
I do too.
But I mean, an acting coach. Come on, how many films do you hear about? Hey, we just had to hire an acting coach for our lead. You don't hear that.
No, that's not generally good, right? Dave Filoni reveals previously unseen conversation between Bendu and Ahsoka from Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah, I saw this.
That's also from Star Wars Newsnet. Yesterday, Star Wars Rebels creator Dave Filoni shared an interesting tweet with a photo and some dialogue from a previously unseen conversation between the Bendu and Ahsoka Tano. This encounter took place right before a confrontation with Vader on Malachor and adds even more fuel to the fire of speculation concerning Tano's fate. So this is what it said. It just occurred to me that I never got to tell you all the story of the time that Bendu met Ahsoka Tano.
And this is
Filoni speaking. Right. Yeah. It was a brief encounter, which took place around the end of the episode The Mystery of Chopper Base from Season 2, just before Ahsoka, Kanan, and Ezra left on their fateful mission to Malachor. Of their conversation, you might find this dialogue to be the most interesting. The Bendu says, "You are set on this confrontation then." Ahsoka says, "I have to know the truth." "So be it, but understand this, much will change as a result of this encounter, including you. Isn't that true of all things as time advances?"
And that was Ahsoka saying that last line.
Yep. The Bendu says, "My dear, when I say change, I mean death. So I will die? Will you? I didn't know that. Goodbye then, Ahsoka Tano, former Jedi Knight."
You know,
it's definitely open to a lot of speculation there.
is.
It doesn't help solve the issue of
I mean, it's very much like the riddles of the Jedi. The Jedi were all, Yoda was famous for his riddles and, not really giving all the information. And it's almost like that. I mean, he told Luke Skywalker that if you go to The Empire Strikes Back, you'll face death, and he didn't die. So, it's along those lines. We all have a choice in the path that we choose, and some choices lead to different things. It's interesting how the Bendu sees her choices.
Yeah, death can just mean the end of something.
It can, absolutely. And, the thing about this that I always go back to, I still believe fully that Ahsoka Tano lived because, number one, at the end of the episode, you see someone who looks very much like her walking into the, into the pyramidish building.
Yeah.
But then Dave Filoni himself at Celebration with the Ahsoka Lives ? Shirt, and at the very end of the segment, it's Ahsoka Lives with an exclamation point.
Yeah.
And he knows beyond everybody else
Right.
whether or not Ahsoka's alive.
And there's one person that knows it's going to be the guy that created
Right.
it. Right.
So there's no doubt in my mind that she lives. Yeah. But that's certainly interesting. I really wish I could have seen that, animated and seen that done.
Yeah.
Because the Bendu was such a fabulous character anyway.
Very cool. I'd love to see him in any form again. Just very interesting.
Yeah.
The HoloNet, your news source for current real-world news with a libertarian Star Wars twist.
All right, so this one, Georgia cop exposed for arresting sober drivers for DUI.
What?
This one's a long article. I just felt there was so much pertinent information in this that I kind of wanted to get it all out there. It's from thefix.com. A police officer in Atlanta, Georgia, trained to evaluate drivers suspected of being impaired by drugs or alcohol, has been recorded on multiple occasions, placing individuals under arrest for driving under the influence, which later proved to be false. WXIA in Atlanta launched an investigation into Cobb County police officer Tracy Carroll after dashboard camera videos revealed him arresting and jailing 3 separate drivers for alleged marijuana use, which he determined as part of his training as a drug recognition expert, otherwise known as a DRE, a state certification obtained by a 2-week course, whole 2 weeks, but which were all subsequently dismissed due to toxicology reports. In 2 of the cases, the charges came at a substantial cost to the defendants, while Officer Carroll has earned a promotion, a merit raise, and a citation for 90 DUI arrests in 2016 alone. In all 3 videos, Carroll can be seen questioning the drivers, waitress Caitlin Ebner, nursing student Princess Mbamara, and an unidentified student in Auburn University about drinking after pulling them over. In all 3 cases, the drivers state that they had not consumed alcohol, to which Carroll responds by stating that indicators suggest to him that they have used marijuana. Ebner offers to take a drug test on the spot, while Mbamara states that she has never smoked pot. Carroll continues to insist that the drivers are showing signs that they have consumed marijuana, and to their considerable dismay, places all 3 in cuffs and under arrest. When asked if she will be released from jail if she provides a drug test, Carroll replies curtly, "You're going to jail, ma'am, okay? I don't have a magical drug test that I could give you right now." In all 3 cases, toxicology reports indicated that none of the 3 individuals showed traces of any drugs in their system.
Of course not.
The first DRE programs were implemented by the Los Angeles Police Department in the 70s. They were intended to provide officers with a standardized 12-step process to evaluate if a driver was impaired from drugs or alcohol and rule out if medical conditions were the cause of the impairment. The programs have the support of police, obviously, and law enforcement organizations, naturally, as well as groups like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which award Cobb County's DUI task force with a trophy in May for its efforts. But situations like the one involving Officer Carroll have been cited by lawyers like Fresno-based defense attorney Eric Schweitzer as police masquerading as scientists. Georgia criminal defense attorney William Head agrees with Schweitzer's assessment of DREs being simply pure guesswork in deciding to arrest motorists. The case law around the country says that if a person has had this additional training, they're allowed to get up on stand and tell the jury that they have special training and detect things that even a doctor can't detect. In Carroll's case, Head said that the DACA videos reveal that he didn't even conduct the proper 12 steps to determine impairment. In the case of the Auburn student, Carroll says that he cuffed the individual because he established probable cause, while in the video with Ebner, he tells her that several indicators have led him to confirm that she used marijuana. He did not go through all the protocols. He did part of them, said Head, but he went ahead and arrested her anyway on guesswork. So basically, in the end, right, it's nothing more than just another excuse to pull you over and arrest you based on some feelings they had or whatever. It's just nothing more than an excuse so they can take a look in your car, see if they can actually get you on something, right?
Sure.
It's I put down it's kind of like the Obi-Wan and Luke DUI droids under investigation checkpoints. That's my new DUI droids under investigation. Our own real life DUI checkpoints where there's no probable cause whatsoever to stop you.
Well, and there's some really good evidence to pointing that these DUI checkpoints are a Fourth Amendment violation because they were stopping you with no probable cause for no reason. They're detaining you with zero evidence. And these are huge issues to begin with. But the fact that this guy is literally arresting people without going through the proper procedures, and of course the procedures are questionable anyway, but he's not even following those procedures, he should be fired immediately. Not only should he be fired, he should have to pay restitution. He should have to pay the court costs, any attorney's fees or anything for any of these people that he arrested, and he should never, ever be able to serve as a police officer again.
It's just sick to me that someone just minding their own business and trying to get along with their life, that they can get thrown into this situation just because some piece of garbage thinks like I'm protecting and serving, and I'm going to show you my way of doing that with someone that hasn't done anything wrong at all.
That's a guy who's let authority get to his head. He thinks he's the badge apparently grants him extra rights, and he can do whatever he chooses.
New Jersey teacher suspended over Trump yearbook censorship. USAtoday.com reported from Wall, New Jersey. The Wall High School teacher and advisor of the Yearbook Club has been suspended due to alleged censorship of images and quotes by students supporting President Trump. Superintendent Cheryl Dyer said Monday that the teacher, who she declined to name, was suspended pending further disciplinary action from the school board. On the high school's website, the Yearbook Club's advisor is listed as Susan Parsons. According to public records, she collected an $87,950 salary last year. I don't have definitive answers to all of my questions yet, but I knew enough at this point to get board approval to take that action, Dyer said. Dyer declined to identify what disciplinary action could be taken. Termination would require the board to file tenure charges against her. According to her LinkedIn page, Parsons has worked in the district for 15 years. On her yearbook class's website, within the district homepage, Parsons included photo editing as one of the real-world skills that students learn during the yearbook production. She did not return a call to her home seeking comment. In an interview with the New York Post, she said, "We have never made any action against any political party, but when asked if she knew who altered the photos, Parsons simply said, 'I'm going to hang up.'" There have been
That's probably the smart thing to do.
She probably shouldn't have started talking in the first place. There have been 3 reported instances of censorship in the yearbook, all revolving around students supporting Trump. Grant Bernardo, a junior at the school, took his school picture wearing a navy blue Make America Great Again shirt from the campaign, but in the yearbook, his photo had been digitally altered so it resembled a nondescript black T-shirt, which you can see in the video at the top of the story on the link here. It was photoshopped, Grant said in an interview on Friday. "I sent it to my mom and dad just like, you won't believe this. I was just overall disappointed. I like Trump, but it's history too. Wearing that shirt memorializes the time," he said.
You know, what would have happened if somebody had done this to a child wearing an Obama shirt?
That's exactly what I have in my notes right after here. And that just goes to show you that we haven't had a chance to look at these notes.
Right. I mean, but seriously, could you imagine the outrage?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. People would have been losing it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
But it's the orange dude. It doesn't matter. No, look, I'm not a fan of Trump at all.
Nope.
He has done almost nothing. That a matter of fact, I think Obama did more his first year that I agreed with than Trump has by a long shot.
Probably.
And so I guess from that regard, I would be closer to being an Obama supporter than a Trump supporter. But either way, that doesn't matter. This is... Look, you don't lose your First Amendment right just because you walk into school. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. Your First Amendment right follows you regardless of where you are and regardless of what's going on around you. Yeah. You always have that right. Well, I take that back. You don't have that right when you step into somebody's private property. For example, you don't have the right to come into my house and start saying whatever you want.
Right.
And nobody else does either because I have the right to restrict that on my property.
Yep.
But that's the only exception. The school is public property.
Yes.
Nobody owns that except for all of us.
Right.
All
Which
of
means
us.
we should all essentially be able to have our freedom of speech there. So, and actually that was in my notes. Is like, well, first of all, again, freedom of expression, right? They essentially took that away from him, all right? But to go like that extra mile to like Photoshop something out of there,
But they're learning real world skills, Brian.
Yeah, it makes me sick.
Right.
It's so ridiculous. It's petty too,
Yep.
Let the, you're trying to force the kids in their decisions, and, it's almost like the college age, liberal demographic. They're trying to force that down into the younger ages as well.
Yep.
And I had him remark about any bets on the chances the Photoshop job happens with an Obama shirt. No takers, right? Because nobody would ever do that.
And this is why on the Lava Flow, I always call schools government indoctrination centers, because that's what they are. You're not there learning your 3 R's like you should be. You're learning government propaganda. And I will tell it just like I tell on my show, the other show, get your kids out of government indoctrination centers. Homeschool them. Put them in private school. Something. But we've got to get a good portion of this next generation out of these indoctrination centers.
Yeah, I was reading, I think it was a BBC article, and they were talking about how like kids are coming out of school not understanding still how to even like balance a checkbook, do like things that like you have to do to survive. Hopefully we don't have this article later on, because it would be silly if I talk about it now. And then we come up upon it later. But in this article, they were talking about like how students don't even know what their biggest expense is when they're going to be out on their own. Like they don't understand. Like anybody that's lived in the real world knows that your biggest expense is housing.
Housing, absolutely.
Yep. And like these kids had absolutely no idea. It's because they're not taught real life
because
skills.
they've been living under mom and dad's roof for years, and school's not going to teach them anything. And sadly, most parents are not doing their job either when it comes to teaching their children, because they expect the government to do that. Well, the government's doing a very poor job.
Yeah. So we're going to move into a little bit more fun. We got some space news here. Now, I originally found this story on Salon, and I've never had to do this before, but this article was so poorly written on Salon, and I really liked the idea of the article, that I had to go find it from somewhere else because it was written so horribly.
Salon is a terrible, I mean, and it's not just poorly written. Of course, that's a big issue with Salon in a lot of ways. But their research is poor. Their ideas are poor. I would avoid Salon with as much as I possibly
I
could.
kind of go with whatever shows up, and in this case, I just went somewhere else to get it because I was tired of reading the garbage.
That was probably a good thing to do for sure.
So it's gravitational waves from black hole are detected for third time, and this is from the Atlantic.com. So congratulations, Atlantic. You get the plug today.
Nice.
Scientists have detected for the third time gravitational waves coming from the merging of two massive black holes somewhere in the universe, the wrinkles in the fabric of space and time created by a powerful cosmic collision.
Can you imagine how violent of an event that has to be, two black holes merging together?
I feel like that's not something I would want to be there for, but if I was, I wouldn't be there for long. So it probably wouldn't matter.
But what a way to go, though, to see something like that. Oh, man.
About 3 billion light years away from Earth, the two black holes, far more massive than our sun, whirled around each other and eventually collided, generating waves like ripples in a pond. The waves spread out into the universe, expanding and contracting space-time as they went. They reached Earth in January, where they were detected as tiny vibrations by sensitive instruments in twin observatories in Louisiana and Washington state. The collision created a single, bigger black hole with a mass about 49 times that of the sun.
Wow.
The Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, which is LIGO, announced Thursday. LIGO first detected gravitational waves in September 2015 and publicly announced the discovery in February 2016, a century after Albert Einstein predicted their existence. In case you had any questions about how smart that guy was.
Right.
The observatory announced a second detection last June, made in December 2015. The first and second detections were located about 1.3 billion and 1.4 billion light years away, making the third detection the farthest and earliest yet. The collision in the first detection produced a new black hole of 62 solar masses, and the second, 21 solar masses. The measurements shocked scientists. Before LIGO's first detection of gravitational waves, all the black holes we knew about had masses less than 6 or 7 solar masses, said David Spergel, an astrophysicist at Princeton University and one of cosmology's top experts. people thought stellar evolution would have a hard time producing black holes of masses of 20 or 30 solar masses. Suddenly, they were seeing black holes measuring 20 to 30 times the mass of the sun are colliding to make even more massive black holes, which meant massive stars exist to make them.
Right.
Am I surprised that black holes collided a little bit earlier in the universe's history? No, it's an ongoing process, Spergel said. Am I surprised that black holes this massive exist? Yes. The latest detection of a newfound black hole of 49 solar masses suggests there's indeed a class of stellar mass of black holes out there gobbling up matter unlucky enough to cross their paths.
I sure hope they don't come around this way.
Yeah, stay away,
Right?
please. So there is actually a little video on the website when you go there. I've seen it in other places too that kind of illustrates how the black holes were like kind of circling each other and then like smacked and then like rippled out. So if I was kind of pondering what would happen if we got like sucked into one of these things. Is there some other side? And if there is, I hope it's a different type of galaxy with lightsabers.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far. Now, I mean, technically, you could do that because that's the only way to bend time.
Space-time,
is
right
to
there.
through some sort of wormhole or something like that and come out on the other side in an earlier time.
Maybe. Yeah.
So maybe we could get teleported to the Star
Or
Wars
maybe
universe.
it just would blast us a bit. So
No,
who
that's more
knows?
than likely.
I don't know. From the Your Tax Dollars Hard at Work section of the news, botched choice for Afghan army uniforms wasted tens of millions of US dollars. And I will say that I did not get this from Roger Paxton's Lava Flow podcast, which he had just dropped recently. And I was like, darn it. I was like, you stole one of our articles. You didn't even realize.
But we decided to talk about it here anyway because it is such a great article.
Yeah,
so.
plus I got a great point at the end about
Okay.
it. So this one I grabbed from NPR.org, and you guys are gonna love this because it's so horrible, it's hilarious. The Department of Defense procured uniforms for the Afghan army in a camouflage pattern that is both far more expensive than other options and likely inappropriate for the landscape there, a U.S. government watchdog says. The pattern choice cost U.S. taxpayers as much as $28.2 million extra since 2008, according to a report out Wednesday, and if changed, could save up to $72.21 million over the next 10 years. Nearly 1.4 million full uniforms and nearly 90,000 pairs of pants had a camouflage print designed to help military personnel blend in with a forest environment.
And I don't know if you guys know much about Afghanistan, but there's not a whole lot of forest there. I mean, there is a little bit in the North Country, I guess, but not a whole lot.
And to answer that question, but according to the report, only 2.1% of Afghanistan is comprised of forest. Well, that's going to be a well-covered forest, my friends.
Right. Stick out like a green thumb.
Yeah.
I think
The findings were detailed in a report from the Special Inspector Generals for Afghanistan Reconstruction, or SIGAR,
Right.
a military agency set up by Congress that audits U.S. spending in Afghanistan. No,
maybe they should audit this spending before the spending happens. Just saying.
It would be, I don't know, ideal.
Right.
No formal testing was carried out, of course, to assess whether the pattern was a good fit for the environment, according to the report. And while it stresses that determining a camouflage pattern's suitability can be complicated, some aspects are not, as one expert put it. Desert designs don't work well in woodland areas, and woodland patterns perform poorly in the desert.
I can't imagine why.
The forest pattern wasn't just potentially inappropriate for Afghanistan. It was chosen over other options that were far less costly. So, as the report explains, there are two basic kinds of camouflage pattern categories. Those that are proprietary, meaning they're owned by a company and require permission and possible licensing fees to use them, and those that are not, meaning no additional permission or fees. When it came time to choose a uniform pattern, personnel from the U.S. Combined Security Transition Command in Afghanistan carried out internet searches and came across proprietary patterns belonging to a Canada-based firm called Hyperstealth. Then they showed those patterns to Afghanistan's defense minister at the time, and he liked what he saw. Several months later, the ministry had settled on the pricey forest pattern, and the U.S. military personnel began to move forward with the acquisition process.
So he picked it based on aesthetics. And the article that I took this from for my show, one of the guy who wrote it was basically saying, what if this camouflage had been pink or chartreuse, and this guy liked the way it looked?
Yeah,
would they
that
have bought it
city
still
camo
then?
or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
would they
like
have
blue.
still bought it? I mean, that's insanity because the way it looked. Oh, doesn't matter how
Hilarious.
how
That's
it
your
works.
one. That's your checks and balance system right there, right?
Unreal.
Yeah, that looks good. Let's go with that.
Unreal.
Yeah. So this is typical government inefficiency. Okay. No checks or balances here. Obviously, they checked with the defense minister, who probably never stepped foot on a battlefield. Would be my guess. Funny enough, stormtroopers wear white armor. So I wanted to bring this up, right? This is their regular outfit, right? Now, we do know that they have other outfits, whatever.
Sure.
But, my first question is, was there anticipation of fighting on snow-covered planets? But
But they're snowtroopers.
there are snowtroopers. Right. So that's not what it is. Right. So the Empire's likely wasting galactic credits here. And we do the same right here with our tax dollars.
Well, and you know that they have the force suits on Endor. I mean, they have different sorts of patterns. But I guess what really bothers me about this is Captain Phasma.
The rebels had different patterns.
Well, but there were, but also the didn't the speeder bike guys, didn't they have?
They were white uniforms, just with different helmets.
You're right. They were white and black. You're right. But what about Captain Phasma? Chrome? Really?
Man.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, but I can make an argument that that's better, though probably more expensive to produce, because at least if there's sunlight out, you might get some glare and it might blind some people and cause them to shoot astray. I don't know.
Whatever.
Which Star Wars canon character will we dissect in this episode of Galaxy's Smallest Political Quiz?
So, Brian, who are we doing this week?
This week, CT-7567.
And obviously that's a clone trooper, but who would that be?
This would be Captain Rex.
My favorite clone trooper of all.
Rex was a clone trooper, captain of the 501st Legion. He served as second in command to Anakin Skywalker.
And was just a total dude.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
That's what you were totally saying.
Right. So we'll start with the questions. Government should not censor speech, press, media, or the HoloNet. How would Captain Rex respond to that?
So first, before I answer any of this, I feel like, as I do a lot of times, I feel like I have to throw out caveats. Now, Rex is interesting because he's a clone.
Right.
Okay. So he's not natural born. He's a clone of someone else. And while that's physical traits, as a clone, he was specifically brought up for nothing else than war as a soldier.
But individuality was part. I mean, the clones did
And
have
it was.
individuality. And it's interesting, as I just read in one of the canon bits recently, and I've read so much canon stuff in the last couple of weeks, I don't remember which one it was, that one of the reasons that the Empire switched from clones to not clones was because the clones were too individualistic. So I can't remember which piece I need to go back and find.
It's almost like they forced themselves to become individuals, right? And we actually see this in like the first episode. It was either the movie Clone Wars or the first episode of Clone Wars with Yoda talking with some of these clone troopers, basically saying like, you guys aren't just fodder. Like you are individuals.
Right.
You have your own souls essentially. Yep. Pretty interesting stuff. So to get back to the government should not censor. I lean towards agree, but he comes from a long time of likely having to ask to speak freely, but definitely later in life, I agree.
Well, the military definitely does censor speech. Even our current military does, but of course, the clones, I'm sure, did as well. Yeah. And you kind of get used to that lifestyle. So I don't know that I would agree with you on this one.
Very possible.
Because I know a lot of ex-military people here in our world who still believe that some speech should be censored, and they got that they were ingrained in that because of their lack of ability to speak freely in the military.
Yeah, okay. I can see that, yeah. And he stayed in the military, right? I mean, he moved on from his Clone Wars to when they found him again, he joined the rebels.
He did, but it was on his own with the other clones for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did jump right back in, and
so,
and saw him in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, so I can see you going maybe on this one because he would probably still retain those same values, I guess.
Sure. So, question number 2 is service should be voluntary. The Jedi policy on the warding of children who are force sensitive and the conscription of soldiers by the Empire is immoral. How do you think Captain Rex feels about this one?
Yeah. So, all right. So, see, the thing here is the clones were conscripted, right?
Well, not just really conscripted; they were born and bred for it.
Yep.
So, yeah, even worse than conscripted, if that's possible.
Yeah, really. If there's a worse thing, that they found it, right? But like we talked about earlier, we see their individualistic traits throughout the Clone Wars series. I say agree here, and the reason for this, and I've gone and kind of pulled out an excerpt from an episode I remember vividly, was in the episode Deserter, he meets Scott LaQuane, who abandoned his post, and he doesn't turn this guy in for desertion. He basically lets this guy live the life he chose. Yeah.
You know, I would imagine that most people who were conscripted at some point, whether Vietnam War, World War II, I would imagine that the vast majority of them would probably be against conscription because of the things that they were forced to go through against their own will. Yeah. Now, of course, some, you'll always have those patriots.
Sure.
But I would imagine most of them won't be against it. So I would agree with you on this. The next one is there should be no laws regarding possession of weapons for personal use.
I agree. We meet Rex in Rebels after Clone Wars. He's clearly got use for his weapons at this time.
Yeah.
And
he used them well still.
Yeah,
so.
I just don't see that.
Yep. Repeal laws prohibiting adult possession and use of drugs.
Yeah, so this was a maybe, despite like a long and extensive history we have with him. His biography is pretty much nothing but battles and war.
Well, I'm into the Star Wars.
Right. So it doesn't really leave much room there. I don't know. Maybe he did something on his downtime. I just don't see it. It's just not really. I don't know that I see that in his character type. Maybe as the older, when he was on Endor,
he
Ewoks,
was in pain or whatever, and needed a little toke every once in a while
Yeah.
to help with some of the pain.
It's possible.
Maybe.
I went maybe. We just don't have enough there.
Right. There should be no requirement to register as a force sensitive with the Galactic Empire.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to have to go agree here. He was close with many Jedi during the Clone Wars, the least of which Ahsoka, Anakin. I don't ever see that being a thing where...
Well, and
I think you would have to agree.
And he and his friends that we meet up with again in Rebels, they took the chip out of their heads themselves to avoid Order 66. So clearly, they had an issue with going after the Jedi, and that's generally what registration leads to. I mean, you're not going to register something that, no, we don't need that information. No, you register things for a reason. So I would see that that's evidence of him probably agreeing that registering would be a bad thing.
Yeah. So, so personal score, 80, 90.
Right. And then we have economic issues. End imperial alliances with corporations and banking cartels. Corporatism is picking winners and losers in the marketplace.
This is one where I wouldn't agree. I mean, he's pretty far removed from normal society, though. I mean, when we find him outside of the theater of war, I mean, they are in the middle of nowhere. So we don't really... I don't know that we have enough to go on for this spot. What are your thoughts on this? I kind of racked my brain on this one a good bit to try.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's evidence. But I think, corporatism is government. I mean, that's government picking winners and losers.
Right.
So I would imagine that with his experience with government in the Empire and then shunning all of that and removing himself from that
he would agree with ending it.
Right. I think that,
and that's why I went there. And it's kind of a judgment call on my part.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. That's what it is with some of these.
End government barriers to intergalactic free trade.
Yeah, I went agree. It was, in the eyes of most people who didn't know of the evil Sith Lords, the barriers to free trade that caused him to be involved in war in the first place, even though it was probably, before his time really came to fruition where he was fighting and stuff. But yeah.
Science and technological advancements should not be controlled or regulated by the Empire.
Agree, especially after he becomes involved with the rebels.
Well, sure, he was using some science and technology when he was on Tatooine with that crawler that they had. It was a former Clone War vehicle, but they were still using that and using the technology behind it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The career path of individuals in the planetary division of labor should not be dictated by the Empire.
This I actually wouldn't disagree with, mainly because he's used to putting people where they need to be, and we even see that during Rebels when we meet them again. Like, you know, you go here, this is how we're going to do this, because he's still a captain.
Well, but putting people where they would be most efficient in a situation. For example, if you and I were working on a project together, and your knowledge of Star Wars is more than mine, and my knowledge of podcasting is more than yours, we come together. That's why you do the show notes. That's why I do all the back end stuff. Yeah. And I that's division of labor. So I think that him doing that, I think him doing that, he put Anakin in a place where he could deflect shots and and so on. I think that he was doing that based on efficiency, but I don't think that he would agree that it would have to be forced on people.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. All right, maybe.
And the last one is taxation is theft, including sovereign planetary funds taken by the Empire as tribute.
Yeah, I went maybe on this one. His entire career was funded due to taxation.
It was.
No matter what side he was on, the money was coming from taxes. I can guarantee you that.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I went maybe.
And so that leaves an economic score of 70. And then the bonus question, did this character initiate Force in the Star Wars universe?
Yeah, so, I mean, at its face value, you have to say yes, right? I mean, however, he's at war most of his life. It's in the theater of war, right? Now, when removed from the war element, though, in the previously mentioned episode of The Deserter, he only uses Force to defend Cut Lawquane's home. And also in the Pong Krell arc, which was probably one of the best Clone Wars arcs. If you haven't watched all the Clone Wars and you're like, I want to watch a few of these, let me watch a few of these. The Pong Krell arc, he's a Jedi Master, and he's a four-armed, I can't think of his alien species, but he's like Dex from the diner that Obi-Wan meets. Right. So he's got like four lights hits, or two. Two double-sided.
And he was the one that ended up making a lot of bad calls.
So basically,
I remember that now.
Yeah, he was basically turning rogue, and he was purposely killing them,
right?
To try to become involved with the dark side, essentially. So at the end, the clones, he has killed a ton of these guys by just absolutely careless maneuvers and done on purpose. He is getting ready to pull the trigger and basically execute him. And he hesitates. He doesn't do it. Now, would he have done it if he had longer? Maybe, but I think unlikely, because generally when you're hesitating, you're not...
There's a reason for it.
Yeah, you're not going to do it. And it was Dogma that pulled the trigger there. So, for being a traitor to the Republic. Rex did not do it. And I think the ability to separate that, I think, shows to me that he probably is libertarian. Right.
And, you mentioned the war thing as well. And even in war, there can be just wars of defense. And I would imagine that he probably considered himself in a just war, defending, the oh my goodness, what's the word? Defending the Republic.
Yeah.
And so he probably considered that to be a just war. Now, it ended up not being such.
Right.
So I think that we can't even really hold that against him, because, if somebody were coming to even take over a libertarian society, it would be, just to defend that society with war. Yeah. So, we both agree that Rex was a libertarian.
Yeah.
Resistance Review. Your favorite Star Wars canon movies, TV shows, books, comics, and more. Reviewed by our hosts.
All right, so we're going to continue with the Skywalker Strikes series. And again, just a quick review of this. The Skywalker Strikes, it's the first issue of the Marvel comic book series Star Wars, and it's the first of 6 issues in the series' first story arc. The comic takes place between the events of New Hope and Empire. It features all the major characters. Roger's holding it up for the camera right now.
Yep.
It's written by Jason Aaron and the artwork's by John Cassaday, and it was released on January 14th of 2015.
And this week we're doing episode
3 and 4.
3 and 4.
Yeah.
We were thinking about doing all the way through the end of it, but this was a really long episode anyway, so we'll finish all 5 and 6 next week.
Yeah.
So part 3 starts off with Luke on the speeder bike, where he ended up at the end of part 2, plowing through a bunch of stormtroopers, wielding his lightsaber. It's really good artwork. And there's another scene of many stormtroopers firing on the AT-AT where Han, Leia, I said AT-AT, on the AT-AT.
That's all right. Either is acceptable.
It is, but I don't think I've ever said AT-AT in my life. I don't know where I got that.
It's on record now, my friend.
Right. Where Han, Leia, and some of the prisoners that they released are. There's an image of Vader walking through the rubble. It's a really, really great shot. We get some conversations between Han and Leia about not getting blocked in as they're trying to make it to the trash fields where the Falcon's hiding. And so then it cuts to 3PO, who's being carried off by these really cool-looking scavengers, and they're taking him off in pieces. Now, he sure ends up in pieces a lot, doesn't he?
The joints are clearly the weak spot on droids.
Right. So they're carrying him in pieces on one of their backs, and of course, what's 3PO doing? He's complaining by repeating a conversation he had with Captain Antilles regarding a nice diplomatic mission sounding exquisite.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Right.
Yeah. Then we get a big scene where Chewie comes through the scavengers, just wrecking shop on these guys. And if you remember, he's kind of been gone a while. We haven't seen him since he got shot off that tower. Or not shot down, but Vader brought the tower down, and Chewie was just kind of jumping off. The AT-AT's taking too much fire, and Han's calling for Luke to come help, or they're going down. The factory's taking too long to explode, right? So there's the factory they were trying to blow up, and now they're realizing that the meltdown was stopped, that they were trying to get this thing to melt down.
Right.
And right at that time, Vader hears from Overseer Agadine. He stated that the meltdown was stopped, and Vader tells him to send out everyone who can hold a blaster to stop the rebels from escaping. The AT-AT's taking damage from Vader, and Han asks Chewie if the ship's in the air. Chewie's response indicates it'll be another day and a half.
Right.
Luke sees Vader taking down the AT-AT, and Han tries to set it down, but it just goes down in a heap. It's just a complete mess. Vader orders troops to move in for the kill, and Luke comes through shouting no. But not quite no, you're not my father, no, but more like a Leslie Slate, a slightly lesser no.
No.
Yeah. He's still concerned, just
right.
Not you're my father.
So Leia, Han, and the prisoners are trying to get out of the wreckage and run towards the trash fields to get to the Millennium Falcon. Vader's with the troopers, and he says he doesn't care about the slaves, that he wants the rebels, of course. Luke gives him some breathing room from some troopers that were closing in, and Leia orders him off the bike to come with them. And, of course, he says no, because the mission can't be for nothing. There's no way he's going to let that happen. Yeah. The troopers are telling Vader that they've entered the trash fields, and the TIE bombers will take them all out now, but that there's a rebel heading back towards the factory. Vader cuts the trooper off and tells them to go after the ones in the fields. He then force pushes some pilot out of one of the Empire's land speeders type of vehicles and goes from there.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah. I just love how he just treats his own guys just like garbage, just tosses them out, kills them. So Luke comes flying through a spot in the wall of the factory that's actually been blown out by Vader because Vader was shooting at him, and he's in hot pursuit. Then we get this quiet scene where the Overseer's just kind of sitting there talking with staff about how the power core is back to normal levels and how, man, that was a close call. And then naturally the next image is Luke coming through on his speeder bike firing all over the place. He's basically started another power core overload. The Overseer's getting ready to say that Vader's going to have his, and then right at that moment, Vader hits him with his speeder. He comes flying through. This guy goes flying. And Luke's hit, but he does get out of the facility before it explodes, and he lets Han and Leia know that he's not going to be able to make it to the Falcon. Vader comes through the rubble like nothing can phase this guy, and the facility's literally falling around him in pieces. And he's getting out, and he kind of sees the Falcon taking off. Han's pretty much out of it because he got concussed from when the AT-AT fell down, and he's basically just mumbling to Leia's questions and responses.
Yeah, and so there's a blockade, but they're able to make it to hyperspace anyway. Vader receives a transmission from Captain Kron of the Star Destroyer Adjudicator.
Yeah, I only know that because that's my job.
Adjudicator. And informs him that the rebel ship has gotten away. The captain's message appears to be interrupted due to him choking on his own windpipe being crushed. Imagine that. Vader talks about, quote, the boy being the last great hope, and says that it's that's what Obi-Wan died to protect. He says that the boy is strong, but untrained, of course, and that he's the only one left to train him. He will be, of course, he doesn't know that Yoda's still alive. He will be Vader's weapon, not Obi-Wan's. He finishes by saying the dark side always wins, and you should know that by now, Obi-Wan. We then have a scene between Leia and Luke, and we realize that he did what?
Yeah, what do we got here? Yeah, I wrote this, and clearly I was a little out of it.
Anyway, so Leia talks about him being very special, and Luke, of course, doubts himself and says that he and everyone should be dead, and that Vader was right. He's not a Jedi, and with Kenobi dead, he never will be.
Yeah, and it was make it back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because we now see Luke on the Falcon, so clearly he made it back, and you were thinking that he wasn't going to be there.
That's right.
So we get a shift now to Tatooine, where a couple of dirtbags they have this like dead Rodian in their T-16. One says to the other that the Dune Sea is a long way to come just to dump a body, and ask why they didn't just dump him in Mos Eisley. The other replies because leaving him there means answering Imperial question and paying Jabba's murder tax. And I have here in parentheses, side note, I believe we did agree that Jabba takes some kind of tribute on our previous Galaxy Smallest quiz with him, but here it clearly outlines he's got a murder tax.
Right.
Like, tax is murder. That's like... Man, that's like super creepy status, weird mix thing going on there. Yep. I don't know. So this guy continues on to say, out in the Dune Sea, no one will notice here. Then the first one asks who lives in this hut. They're going by this hut, and if nobody's going to notice, we're going by this hut here. And the other replies, it's a crazy old wizard, but don't worry about him. He keeps to himself.
I wonder who that was.
Yeah, just keep an eye out for sand people. And then we get 4 images. It shows Kenobi's old place where they went by, and then it shows the door. So it shows the door, the outside door, the inside, then like more of the inside, but with a blurred view of this box, and then a more clear picture of the box, which reads, for Luke.
Well, it's not a box.
Or it's
the diary.
Or
maybe it is a box, and the diary was in the box. I don't
looked like
that.
A box to me, but maybe that's...
So the diary comes out of this, which plays a big part in a lot of the Star Wars.
Yeah, pull
comics.
it up on the thing, and we can show our viewers what it looks like. And so this is the end of the third comic, and then
I think you are right. I think that is a box actually,
box?
but the diary is what's in there.
The
There's several things in there, including the diary that ends up playing a big part in the rest of the series, including the one that just came out this week, Yoda's Secret War story arc, which was really good as well. Yeah. So then we get to the 4th comic in the series, and it starts off at Jabba's palace, and Bib Fortuna, with all of his grace, is inviting Vader. And Vader gets in, and right from the get-go, he says to give the Emperor what he wants, and he will allow you to live. And, of course, Jabba's going to handle that. Followed by, this concludes the negotiations. So Jabba laughs, of course, and says that he knows why the Emperor sent him, as he clearly knows how to strike a bargain. Jabba mentions the Death Star and the Simoon 1 tragedies, and Vader says it's rebel lies and propaganda, and to speak no more of it. Jabba says he can pretty much have whatever, as long as the Emperor pays him well. And, of course, Jabba's always in it for the money. Yeah. And Vader says he'll be paid whatever they decide to pay. I mean, this is great, seeing this negotiation between these two people who don't negotiate.
Right, yeah.
It was really great. Jabba gets a bit testy with him, saying it'd be a shame if shipments were intercepted by pirates or eaten by space slugs. Vader says the Empire is prepared to deal with those as well as Hutts who want to be a pain.
Yeah.
Jabba then questions why he's leaving so quickly, because he likes to seal his business ventures by watching someone die.
Yeah. Of course he does. So Han and Chewie are now it cuts back to Han and Chewie. They're now back with the rebels and fixing the ship, which is of course a mess. Han notes it was a miracle it even flew. 3PO is talking to R2, and Leia's meeting with General Dodonna and Admiral Akbar and Mon Mothma. Akbar speaks of things they've done and that they can't do much more, and Leia states that they may have wounded the Empire, but they have to press the advantage or it will have been for nothing. Mothma agrees with Akbar and questions how much she is pushing her team. Then it cuts to Luke training with a couple of remotes, the lightsaber training ball things he was training with there in New Hope. he got hit a bunch by these things, and then Leia comes into the room right after he basically just cuts both of these things down. He was just clearly angry. He's letting his anger and his hate get to him.
Right.
He cuts her off before she gets started. He's just not interested in another mission. He believes he almost got all of them killed, and he's still not a Jedi, and he just kind of wants to be on his own.
Right, so then it cuts to Tatooine, and we get a scene of a cloaked and masked individual looking for someone. 4 deadbeat Rodians. Star Wars does love picking on Rodians, of course. Yeah. And so these 4 deadbeat Rodians approach this person saying that they heard a reward is being offered and they'd take it, but by take, they mean rob. The cloaked individual takes out the knees of the Rodians with a voice-activated smart targeting scatter blaster. That was a really cool thing.
Yeah.
This person is looking for Han Solo, and the masked person extracts the information out of the Rodians. The comic then cuts to Jabba's sail barge, and somehow he manages to convince Vader to come along for the ride. Which I would not have expected Vader to do that.
Not in a million years, and he's just chilling on the yacht.
Yeah, I think that was. I just don't think that's not in Vader's nature. I think that they could have left that part out of the comic, personally. But whatever. Salacious Crumb laughs, and I love Salacious Crumb. Can I just say that?
If you're like a Muppets fan, right? Salacious Crumb's your favorite character.
Like Fraggle Rock. It makes me think of some of the Fraggle Rock stuff. Right? So anyway, Salacious Crumb laughs, and Vader says if he likes that creature, he should tell it to never do that again in his presence. Now that's awesome.
Vader.
Right. Jabba asks if the bounty hunters he provided proved adequate, and Vader said he was warned never to speak of it again.
So Jabba says they aren't speaking of it. They're just listening to the sweet song of dying banthas. Vader goes on to say that they best prove adequate. The Wookiee's mission is simple, and the other one, his target, is only a boy. Jabba remarks it was a boy who blew up the Death Star, and if Kenobi was involved, perhaps a boy who fancies himself a Jedi. Right. Vader, of course, says there are no more Jedi, then asks Jabba to tell him all he knows about Kenobi's time there. Jabba says he has many stories about how he was a pain, then demands to his guards they move to the Sarlacc pit. Jabba remarks that it's hard to believe someone from Tatooine could have destroyed the undestroyable Death Star. Luke leaves in his X-Wing, and he's set his course for Tatooine. He's looking for more answers. There's a new person talking to the same 4 Rodians. So now we got a different person that's out of the shot. We can't see who it is, but someone's talking to the same 4 Rodians that have bandaged knees now, and they're looking for someone. The Rodians say they don't know where Solo is, but this person says Solo can wait. This person wants to know about a man called Kenobi. One Rodian wants to know why he's looking for Kenobi. The still unrevealed character says Kenobi's dead. And the last image is a full-page image, and it's Boba Fett standing there asking the questions. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boba Fett.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So yeah, next week we'll be doing episodes 5 and 6 in the story arc, and then we'll decide after that what we want to do. If we want to go back to Rebels, if we want to do some more of the comics, because there's been some really good comic story arcs coming out this last week or two.
Yeah, give us a shout. I just picked up the 3rd Darth Maul. I still haven't gotten around to reading it because I was finishing up Empire's End, which I brought back tonight.
And this brings up a good point, because I was listening to Brian Sovereign the other day, and of course we advertise this show on Brian Sovereign's Sovereign Tech podcast, and definitely check out Sovereign Tech. It's a great show.
Yeah.
And he brought up something that was really good. He said that no podcast out there really does a weekly recap of the weekly comics that come out every Wednesday, because they come out Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I'm not even sure, but that might be something worth looking into.
So
my problem is I hate spending the money on individual comics, because I usually buy them in the 6 story arc or yearlies. So I hate to spend.
I don't mind too much. I mean, it kind of depends on what it is, and it kind of depends on my mood too.
Right.
If it's been out for a bit, I'm going to be grabbing like the grouped up ones together. If it's current one and like the mall one going on, I'm grabbing the singles right now. Yeah. I like the rarest on like Rar Dinosaur Rar, which she has in her logo. She's a YouTuber.
Okay.
And she does Star Wars like comics stuff, like review stuff. So if you really like the comics, dig the comics, check her out.
Yeah, I love the comics. Matter of fact, I own all of the story arcs that are out right now. They're just great stuff. Yeah. Some of the best stuff Marvel's put out in a long time.
Yeah.
So anyway, we do this show pretty much for fun, but we also like to, maybe get a little bit out of it as well to cover some of our costs and things like that. So if you want to give us some money, you can throw us a per episode donation using either Bitcoin or Federal Reserve notes, and you can do that at supporting the show at resistingempirepodcast.com/support. And another thing that we do is every day, 7 days a week, we put out a Star Wars meme of some sort of a Star Wars Liberty meme. And it's at noon Eastern time every day. And it's on both Facebook and Twitter. So definitely make sure to check our Facebook and Twitter page out. You can find them both by searching Resisting Empire Podcast on either one of those formats. And so check those out. And if you have any great Liberty Star Wars memes, shoot them to us. We'll definitely add them to our rotation because, it's hard to find a bunch of them, frankly.
People love those things. We get comments on those all the time. Like, oh, this one's funny. People just love laughing at them. And there's some pretty good ones. And also, before I forget, give us a shout. Like, if you've got something that you think we should review or whatever, let us know. Yeah, shoot us an email.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So until next time.
May the non-initiation of force be with you.
Thank you for listening to Resist the Empire. Find us online at resisttheempirepodcast.com and on Twitter at Empire Resistor. Never miss an episode by subscribing on any podcatcher or by going to resisttheempirepodcast.com/subscribe. This has been a PAX Libertas Productions podcast.